everybody, welcome to Live at Chance's House. Welcome to the show today. I am super excited because I've got a fantastic guest here today that I want to share with everyone in the world. His name is Trey Alexander. Now, if you ask yourself, okay, who's Trey Alexander? Well, let me tell you, all you got to do is go put his name in with the word guitar, and you're going to find out, but we're going to talk about it. Trey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you very much. It's a beautiful day. Got the sun shining in here, so that's great. I'm actually at my location where I teach. So this is the guitar spot in Red Line, PA. So,
oh, fantastic. So is that's near Lancaster, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually, this is York area. So York, it's not that far from Lancaster, probably about 30 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So kind of a burb of the outside. So what's really cool about this is that we've got a mutual friend and got us together for this interview. And I started looking up some stuff, and I had, admittedly so, I will say, I didn't know your name, and I started looking it up. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of fascinating things here. This is going to be like a killer interview, at least for me. And I want to share what I've learned and what you've done with the rest of the world. So let's start off with the biggest thing and just kind of, how did you get started? Like when was the moment you went, I want to play guitar?
Yeah, so actually growing up, my parents were antique dealers, right? So we traveled, we were on the road probably every other week. I was in a different town, which is funny, kind of prepped me before I knew it. I was being prepped to be a musician, but they were very into antiques. So we were around all kinds of cool old stuff growing up, Buddy L trucks to tin toys to celluloid toys, all the way to, old antique paintings, there was everything. And of course, amongst that stuff, there was also cool guitars, and this is the time before eBay. So everything hadn't been picked through to death, so there were cool gems lying everywhere. And I think my very first job was being a battery boy. This was before I could hardly talk, I was very young, and I would check the battery, that was in these old battery operated toys, But the first time I got into guitar, there was an old antique sunburst acoustic, kind of like you see how some of these on the wall had that sunburst color. Yep. And it was a dog of guitar for sure. It was the worst guitar ever, but it looked pretty. And so it was a decorative piece in our house. So amongst the Mickey Mouse and Disney toys and, Daffy Duck, all those old like celluloid toys and Buddy L trucks, there were these guitars on the wall. And nobody in my family ever played music. My dad just loved music passionately. And so he had this old junky acoustic, and I think it had 3 strings on it, and so one day out of the blue, I was 14, maybe turning into 15. I picked it off the wall and I heard something on the radio and I kind of noodled it out. My dad was like, that's not normal.
Right.
And I was like, it's not? That other people can't do this? I didn't know, And so he's like, no, that's definitely not normal. So he immediately took me to a music store, and was like, let's try to get some lessons, and within the first week, it bit me so hard. The bug bit me as hard as it can bite anyone. I went from never playing guitar to probably playing 6 to 12 hours a day immediately. Wow. And, my dad and my parents knew. They were like, this is it. He found the thing he loves, and I'd always been into other things, hobbies, everything from skateboarding to shooting pool to, you name it. I was into it. I loved it, but when I found the guitar, it was definitely like seeing the sun for the first time. It was just awesome. And I couldn't believe that, this little thing with 6 strings could bring this much joy to me, and so being raised around somebody who loved music so much, of course, he had an amazing taste and range of music. So we would go to these antique shows, and back then records weren't, it was kind of the death of records at that time. There weren't as many people listening to records. I'm sure, there were some out there, but records seemed to be dirt cheap at the flea markets,
Right.
So every Sunday he would bring me home Muddy Waters records and Lightning Hopkins records. How cool that he knew that stuff, right? Like now I appreciate the fact that he knew all that cool eccentric stuff, but at the time, I just thought it was awesome sound. It was different, and so that was what I listened to, was all those old blues records. And then of course he got me into guys like Gary Moore, and Still Got the Blues record, and all the Stevie records were amazing. Very big Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix fan for sure. But back to the guitar thing, once it bit me, I was trying to find a teacher, and I finally did track down a teacher. His name was Gene Dickershide, and there was another one named Tommy Gunn, two very big influences in my beginning youth guitar, And I knew right away when I met those guys it was right, and they saw how hungry I was, so I was just driven to play, and luckily my dad was so supportive of it, and he had some connections in the antique industry. So he also knew some of these people who own clubs and stuff, because they would often buy antiques for their walls of the restaurant bars. So I'll never forget it. There was a little club called Big Mama's, and it was on Keller Avenue in Lancaster. And it was a little blues club. That's what it was. But it was inside of a Holiday Inn. And I'd only been playing for like 2 weeks, I didn't know anything, but I was playing all day long every day. But I was still very amateur, of course, 2 weeks in. And so one day my dad comes in and he's like, "Get your guitar, boy." If I could give you a picture of my dad, he looked just like Santa Claus. I mean, to a T, and the jolliest, most amazing human being you'll ever meet. I mean, he would just light up a room. Both my parents were so stellar. I cannot tell you the blessing that is, and how fortunate I feel that I had great parents who were together and helping me through this journey,
Yeah.
So he's like, "Grab that guitar, boy, we're going somewhere," And he would often take me to like music shops later on, but this was at like 8 p.m. And I was like, "Dad, everything's closed." And he's like, "Trust me, get your guitar, boy," Grab it, and we're driving, like, "Where are we going, man?" And we pull up to this Big Mama's club, I'm like, "What are we doing here, man? You don't really drink. What are we doing?" And he's like, "It's not what I'm doing." I said, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You go on in 15 minutes, boy, get your guitar." And of course, been playing 2 weeks, white as a ghost. I'm like, about to throw up. I had no clue what was coming,
Yeah.
But thankfully he forced me into it, and you're down in I remember being in like where the bathrooms were, which were downstairs, and that defining moment where you go, either I'm going to run out the door and never look back, or I'm going to get up there and see what happens. And so of course I got up there and absolutely loved it. And I was lucky because the musicians were so awesome. I mean, that's one thing. I don't know how the jam scene is now, but back then you could go to a jam night really almost every night of the week.
Yep.
And there was a place to try new songs out, to hang out with other fellow musicians. They usually had a very good house band, so you would always be around pro people.
Mm-hmm.
And that really honed my skills over the years, because the teachers, it's one thing to have your lesson, you go into your lesson and you learn what you learn. But to be able to immediately pull those ideas and then jump up on stage, and my dad would take me to him like 4 or 5 times a week. And I mean, how fortunate was I for that? I mean, it was amazing. I miss it so much. And of course I miss him and all the greatness that he was. But that was such a great journey for me. And man, did it help my playing and my musicianship. And then also just, dealing with people and learning how to talk to people, being around that atmosphere helps so much for sure. But that's how it started.
That is great. The love and support that I'm hearing just from your voice that you got from your dad and really both of your parents. I mean, what a massive influence that was on you and how you progressed and what you did. I mean, I have the same thing. My parents were super supportive of whatever I wanted to do. But they knew I had the music bug. I think for me personally, I kind of made the realization that I know that I'm good at what I do, but I didn't know that it was my path. Everyone has passions about things, but maybe it's not their path necessarily. let me ask you this from a guitar. This is from a guitarist talking to another guitarist saying, okay, you hear how it's supposed to be. And this is, I guess, true for any profession,
Mhm.
but, and this is going to lead to the next question. You'll understand why. Is the 10,000 hour rule really what it's about? Or would you consider yourself a virtuoso where you just picked it up and was like, I can do this?
I think that the hours spent and the right hours are the most important thing. And I would say that, being a teacher and teaching so many people, the people who are most successful in the industry end up being the people who weren't totally gifted because they want it so bad. And I think that's the ingredient, right? Like,
Yeah.
yes, maybe some natural talent is helpful, but that drive can't be overlooked. That drive and that want to do it is so important. So coming up, and I teach so many people, and a lot of times, unfortunately, the truly gifted ones, the ones that are like perfect pitch and, can play out of the womb almost, end up not really doing that well because it kind of peters out over time. They don't have quite the drive. Now, that's not always, of course, sometimes you get those anomaly cases where it's just the right things work together, but yeah, time is very important. But I think the drive to want to do it, to be around music more than the gift part of it, is the most important thing. Wanting to play constantly,
Yeah.
have the guitar in your hand over the virtuosity thing,
That 100% makes sense. And if you take any time that, I know you've watched them, I watch them all the time, and any documentary about, the bands that we love, and you hear the stories that they say, it's like, man, I packed my bags and I moved to LA, and I lived in a car for like 9 months before I you hear these stories, you're like, how is that possible? How do you
Yeah.
live? What do you do? Well, it's the drive, what you're saying. It's, I'm going to do this. I will be successful. And the people that have that get to those, those goals. They reach the heights of whatever it is that they wish to reach.
You're
Now,
totally.
when you, let me segue into this next part though. So here's the thing that I'm curious about as I'm reading about your background, and I want to tell everyone, and I want to get this right, so I'm going to read it. But in 2006, you were named Guitar Player Magazine's Guitar Superstar Award of 2006. So, look, you had to have been playing for some time before then. How do you get recognized for something like that? How did you show up? How did the competition work? Just kind of briefly, because I'm curious. It's like, is it like football nationals when the college teams are checking out the pros are checking out the college teams, and you go to like a camp and they like, well, this guy's got skills here, but he's not good here. All right, send him to the next round. How does that work?
I
What
mean,
happened?
it's a little similar to that. And I'm sure like most of the standard guitar competitions are like that. Like the GC one has a lot of brackets, that you go through and you kind of train, and, you might go to a bunch of events, I was lucky because I really, I never looked at music competitively like that. I just loved it so much. And it was kind of, I remember it was Adam Hirota, actually. I think that's who signed me up for the first Guitar Center event that I was in. But it was one of those things of like your friend being like, hey, man, you should do this, And actually, John Michael's dad went to a few of them with me too. This was back, so his dad kind of mentored me on business, and I taught, how I met him was through guitar lessons. And he's one of the last few people that knew my dad, actually, that, that I still talk to and know. But it's kind of crazy to think about because I would have never entered that competition on my own accord. It was friends kind of pushing me towards it. And man, I'm so glad it happened. I mean, what a life-changing event to have happened. But it is one of those things where you get picked as a top, 9 or 10 people in the world to go do this. And you're kind of hazed, everybody looks at what you're into, and then you got to write a piece for it. So you write an original piece, and then, then you go out and you perform it in front of a live audience. And at the judges there, it was Joe Satriani, Steve Lukather, Richie Kotzen, so kind of a who's who of crazy guitar players, and
Right.
so, I mean, I would have never assumed that I would have won that competition. You know, there were so many great players there, and I was just so fortunate to be on the list. I really had felt like I had won already just being picked, you know. And a couple years before that, maybe a year or two before that, I was in the Mike Varney spotlight, which was, you know, Mike Varney discovered like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and Yngwie Malmsteen and Paul Gilbert. And I remember getting that phone call at like 4 a.m. when I first got into that. That was my first big national press, you know. So I wonder if some of those things did play roles too down the road, you know, because he was affiliated to Guitar Player. Who knows if they knew of me because of that, or because I had already been in there. And then I actually entered the main guitar competition that I was in, which was originally called Guitar Hero, and then they switched it to Guitar Superstar. I'm sure for licensing reasons, you know. And,
Probably.
You know, being involved in that, you know, Guitar Player magazine was outstanding, amazing, but I got in there through a thing called Sonic Bids. Are you familiar with that?
I am. Yes.
Yeah. And that was my first kind of, you know, I'd never had a digital press kit. And as I was kind of training with Mike Valutis, which is John Michael's dad, he was like, you really need to have something tangible that people can see. You know what I mean? That way, when they know, you know, they hear of you, they can go look you up and see a bunch of things, you know?
Yes.
And so that was the push to do those things. And thank goodness he did, because when I first signed up, there was a free entry for that guitar competition. And so what a weird chance, you know?
Yeah.
The universe sometimes does direct you where you're supposed to be, you know? So.
Yeah, that's again, circling back to what started it. I mean, sure, maybe the planets aligned and you were at the right place at the right time, but you were already working towards it. You already had the drive. I mean, you just mentioned it too. You were in the spotlight before you even got to this big accolade that you got, which, you know, clearly put you into a different level altogether.
Sure.
What would you say is what was the effect after that? So how does that work? Look, I've talked to a few people that have been in competitions. I've known people that have been on The Voice. I've known someone that I actually know someone that has been in the top 3 of American Idol, for example, right?
Fantastic.
I've got friends that are successful in Nashville. There's always this moment and they go, this is when it happened. So like when you won that, what was the biggest door that opened? Just how did that change your life? Or did it not at first? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both, right? Like, because, you know, whenever something like that happens, you're really unsure what's next, right? Because, you know, it's a big national thing and you're unsure what's going to be the thing to catapult you to the next level, you know? And so when I came home, you know, I was promised with that competition, you won a bunch of gear, you got a bunch of cool guitars, which was awesome. And then on top of it, they put a feature article in Guitar Player magazine,
cool,
which is a huge deal, right? Because you're going to get seen by every one of their viewers, you know? And so it was one of the main pull-out, you know, interviews. So it went through like all my gear and what I like to do and how I like to play. And through that process of going out to California and meeting like the editor-in-chief, which was Michael Melinda, and all these wonderful people. Rebecca was awesome out there. I mean, there were so many good people out there just trying to help musicians, you know? And I think that was the thing I took home from it more than anything, is that they're looking for great things. They really do want to help musicians. It's just sometimes hard to filter through all of it. You know, there's a lot of noise, right? But once I was in front of them, I mean, they wanted to help so much. So that one article turned into like, I think it was 13 articles and like different little spotlights. They would call me sometimes and like have me in the contents page playing behind my head or something, you know. It was just so nice of them, you know. And so that was a huge catapult just to people recognizing me and, you know, if, you know, being able to search me, I would come up right away, you know, whereas before it would, you know, be on the 50th on the bottom of the list, you know. So just having that YouTube, and back then YouTube wasn't quite as big. So when I was on it, 500,000 views was a lot of views at that time. It was a pretty big video, you know, and
yeah.
So that alone, and you could kind of watch it on how they have a report to see where you're getting seen. Yeah. All the Japan ones started filling up, so because over there guitar's so big, in Japan and China. And then of course around here too, locally where I knew people, but then also in California and New York. And it was really cool to see that, because it's hard to get recognized out in those locations just on your own, just doing guitar, And so it was a huge catapult. And then just having the proper gear too,
Yeah.
Having good pro gear, because I had maybe one or two good guitars, but nothing that I felt was like real super pro yet, And so they gave me basically a whole setup, like a whole live rig. They gave me some money and some press, which was very helpful. And I'm trying to think of what else happened. Oh yeah, then the year after that, there was two things that were big catapults. The year after it, I got to go back and meet all these musicians. So Steve Vai was that year, and just get to talk with them and hang out with them. I think Nuno Betancourt was there that year.
Nice.
And then the year of the competition, I got invited to Steve Vai's house and got to hang out at his house. I think he got us Indian food, and we all just got to sit around and play his guitars. I mean, talk about a dream come true,
Right.
It was fantasy land for me. And then when we went to the NAMM show, are you familiar with that? The NAMM show?
Absolutely.
Guitar Player Magazine walked around with me, specifically, like toted me around with them and got me endorsements with literally everyone. And I mean, what company does that? I just couldn't believe how good they were to me. I mean, I'm forever in their debt and forever grateful for those people and the boost that they helped, it's just the push they gave me.
Wow.
Fantastic for sure. Those were two big major things,
So what's the play? Look, it's what I want to do. Everybody works for what they love to do, and we hope that what we love to do will also sustain us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I love what I do. I love my job, but I also work because I need to make a living.
For sure, yeah.
Make no mistake, that's something that we all think about. Some of us live on different means, and some don't want to earn as much as others, and it just depends wherever your goals are at. But so what was the first, like, did you get in a band? Did you go sign somewhere quickly? Were you a studio musician? What happened? Like, was there anything?
I was kind of doing all of those things. So, so I kind of did all of them at once, because when I was out at the competition, I remember, different players were there, and they were like, listen, man, and actually Michael Melendez sat me down too. And he was like, listen, I think a lot of people, when they win something like this, they assume that all the doors will open and this is it, right? This is the aha moment, and you'll immediately be famous and never have to work again, But he said, that is not the truth. He says, if anything, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than you did.
Yeah.
Go home and think about this, because if you really work hard, then you can do this for a living. And this will be the catapult to help your career. But you got to go into deep hard work mode. And for this one article, call every paper call every magazine, let people know, because most people aren't going to know this magazine unless they research, unless they are guitar players or musicians, they might not follow this magazine. So if you call them, most people are pretty receptive. And he was very right. So when I came home, I started calling as many people as I could. And of course, at the same time, I was teaching like 80 people a week, which is an insane schedule, So I would get up in the morning at like 6 a.m. and call all the East Coast papers and magazines. And then, of course, at the time, I was fronting my own band, which is the Trey Alexander Band, and we were working hard at that. And so I was just trying to get out there as much as I could with that. And then when I would come home after teaching, 10 or 12 hours, then I would call the rest of the people from the West Coast.
Right.
And so there wasn't much time for sleep, but it really did help my career. And I would say, talking to other people, that's the main thing. It's just, you have to be proactive. You have to, because it's a business like any other, right? And you can't expect them to search you out. You got to go out there and show your product, you know, and it's daunting sometimes because, you know, ultimately I just want to sit on a desert island and play my guitar. You know, that's my favorite thing in the world, but, you know, and tour it, you know, but there's also other things you have to do in the business, you know, and just like YouTube, when the lockdown happened, you know, there was groups of musicians who were out of work all of a sudden. And you can always tell the really hardworking guys, because even if they were older and they had no clue about the internet or YouTube, they were out getting setups and they were willing to do the work, because it's hard work, but it sure beats laying stone, you know? So
yeah, no doubt.
You know
no
what
doubt.
I mean? So if you can play guitar for a living, even if it's hard work, you know, teaching 12 hours is hard work, but I love it so much, and I'm so blessed that I get to play guitar all day long and be around other people who love it as well. You know, so
it's so cool. So I have to admit, I'm geeking out a little bit just because, you know, I love talking about guitar, and I've watched your videos, and you're an amazing player, amazing talent. So I do want to talk a little bit here about your latest project and what's going on. And that project is called Valerian's Son. I want to get to that, but I have to know a couple more things just real quick, because I'm kind of geeking out a little bit. All right. Yeah. So my favorite guitar is a Fender Telecaster. I'm a rhythm guy more than anything else, but I love the way it feels. It sits well on my body. I love the neck. I like having the single coil. I love rock and roll, but I get both sounds that I need out of that guitar. You can see it, you know, behind me now. I have a Fender Stratocaster. That's an Eric Clapton custom. I always wanted a Strat, and it's kind of funny you talk about the support that your dad gave you. Well, when I learned how to play guitar, my dad bought me like a $99, I think it was a Yamaha something. It wasn't even
probably, it was a Pacifica, probably.
Yeah, I think it was called an Eterna, Yamaha Eterna. It wasn't even a acoustic electric, and it was not a great guitar, but it did the job. And he said, "Listen," he's like, "I'll make you a deal. If you stick with this, we'll get some lessons. You start learning how to play, and you stick with it. One of these days, I'll buy you a good guitar."
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay." Well, that time didn't happen for a while, and I wasn't worried about it. I didn't hold him to the promise. It wasn't like I was like, "Oh, hey, I need that guitar." He waited, and he made it special. And I graduated with my master's degree in business and finance, and you know, I'm probably at this point, you know, 25 years old, and it was that guitar that he got me, and I was like, "Oh, well, you said you were going to get me a good guitar. You certainly did."
Yeah, and holy cow moment. Yeah,
oh my, it was a holy cow moment. And I kind of always kind of look at it though, and I go, because I'm not a noodler. Scales weren't something that I really put a lot of time in. I'm a power chord guy. I like writing songs. I'm an acoustic singer songwriter guy, and so I almost kind of feel like the guitar goes to waste. So I always love it when other people play it, because I can go, "Oh, yep, it's not the guitar, it's me."
Yeah.
Anyway, I just say that story because I love guitar, and I love the challenge of it, but I just love the story and the way it makes you feel, and how you know, think about different instruments and what they mean to you in your life. What's your favorite guitar? Like, is it the one you got in your hand right now, or do you have one?
One of them. Actually, I'll show you two guitars that are really cool. So this is an LSL. So see if I can get that up there. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
This is amazing. They make custom Strats, Telecasters, and I think they make double cuts as well, and offsets, which are kind of like a Mustang or Jazzmaster. But as you see, these things are just out of control, beautiful, really cool guitars. And they did this for another band I was supposed to tour with, Galactic Empire, and it, you know, supposed to have that Star Warsy vibe, you know?
Yeah.
So they built this for me, but what amazing instruments. So I'm a Strat guy at heart, but I love Tellys too. And so here, I'll show you this one too. This is a really cool guitar as well. This is made by one, actually, one of my, like, I consider him a neighbor because he lives like right down the road. But he makes custom guitars that are out of control beautiful. So the company is Twin Picks, and the play on words is out of control. But this is made all out of cherry. And so he was another guy, like a great guitar player who's just one day decided he wanted to build guitars. And I mean, the craftsmanship is out of control. So it's like a drop top telly. There's like an arm cut and a belly cut. And these guitars are so phenomenal. And so I'm also a huge fan of the Telecaster. I think they really do have a lot of, you know, very good for rock and roll, very good for blues and jazz, but they can also, you know, they can be super pretty and delicate all the way to the raunchiest hard rock to the bluesiest thing. So it is a tough debate between the Tele and the Strat because they are so darn versatile, you know?
They are.
My first really good guitar, I would say, is a similar story to yours because I actually got it when I was in Boston, and we were up there for the big antique show called Brimfield. And so we brought a couple things with us from a show. I think it was like a backpacker, Martin backpacker we had picked up somewhere. It was like a second, so it was very cheap, you know, and an old PV amp. And I remember the funny part of this story is at the time, one of the local music shops would only give us $1 for that amp because it was so heavy and big. And it was tube, you know, but it just wasn't a sought after model. And so the guy was like, I'll give you $1, you know? And I was like, I'll just keep it, man, you know? So we took it up to Boston, you know, it's just to see if maybe somebody would trade us or do something that, you know, you're always wheeling and dealing at those shows. And we went to this little music shop in Boston, and there was a little old man there, and his son, I think, is who was there helping him, you know? And I went there originally because I wanted to try an SRV Strat because I was so influenced by him. And of course, I didn't like that guitar. I thought I would and dreamed about it every night since I had started playing. And once I got it in my hands, I just was not impressed with it, you know? So of course, I was upset and discouraged, and my dad was like, listen, try the other ones, because you never know. Maybe you'll find the one, you know? And so I'm trying other guitars. I tried the Hendrix one. I tried a bunch of different models, and there sat the Jeff Beck one, the Seafoam Green Jeff Beck Strat. And at the time, nothing was like that, right? It had the roller nut. It had the lock and tuners, and they were that like off silver color, which like kind of looked modern and sci-fi a little bit to guitar player. It had the lace sensors, and they looked weird and different, you know?
Yeah.
And that very, you know, crazy seafoam green color, you know, and would have not been typically what I would have picked up. But from the moment I touched it, I was like, oh no, this is it, Dad, you know? And he's like, great. It's good that you like cheap ones, because that's like $2,100, Trey, you know? And so we're talking back and forth. Of course, we know we can't get it. Mom would kill us, you know? And so as we're sitting there talking, the old man hears us, you know, and he comes over and he's like, well, what's the deal? You like that one? He said, well, I used that in the studio a couple days, and so we're going to discount a little bit. And my dad's like, man, we would really like it, but, you know, we're just going to try it for a little bit more, you know? And of course, I wanted it so bad, but, you know, being respectful, didn't want to say anything else. So I just kept demoing it. And the guy's like, well, do you have anything for trade, you know? And that's so untypical of a music store. They usually don't want to trade.
Right.
So I knew something was fishy right away, you know? And he was like, well, what do you got for trade? And I said, we don't have much. We got a Martin backpacker and $1 amp, you know? And he goes, well, let me see it, you know? So we wheel it in, you know, all 500 pounds of that PV tube amp, you know? We get it in front of the guy, and he goes, even up. And I said, what? What do you mean even up? And he's like, even up. Of course, I immediately like, yeah, I look at my dad, you're not serious, are you? You know, he was serious. So he gave us
Wow.
that guitar for like basically $101 if I want to be technical,
You think, do you think that he saw it? Do you think that he
He must have seen it.
like
He
he was
saw
like, this guy, something about you, and that that was the guitar. You think he had to,
He
right?
knew it.
Yeah.
He did. He
That's
knew it
so
was.
cool.
It's so neat, I mean, what a neat story to have happen, and the catapult of that. I remember how much I played once I got that guitar. I mean, I was so hooked. I couldn't get enough of it. You know what I mean? So what a neat experience, and so fortunate and blessed that something like that happened to me, and because that became my main guitar. I should have brought it for the interview because I still play it all the time, and it's still one of my best sounding guitars. I wish I could find that guy. I've been up there before, but I don't remember any of the things. I was so young, and it's
Yeah.
so a lifetime ago now. So um, I'm sure that either they still have their business and the kid runs it, or it's long gone, which you never can tell. So, but maybe he'll see this, and it'd be cool to reconnect with him for sure and thank him again.
It's out in the world. It's in the ether. So, I've seen stranger things happen. I think that's like the best story ever. That's like the feel good story for me ever. Like, that's just so cool. It's like, this guy knows. There's no way he didn't know.
Yeah,
There's
he
no,
knew, right?
he knew.
And it was that, I'm still so hungry. I have such a passion for it. Guitar is the most magical thing to me, that just every part of it, the learning of it, the playing of it, there's no part of it that bores me, that I'm so hooked. I still feel like a 15-year-old kid every day when I pick up my guitar. I can't believe I get to do it every day, and that I get to do it for a living, let alone, and make money doing it. It's just I feel so lucky and so blessed that I get to do this.
Wow. There's so much that we could talk about, and I could go on, and I would love, just, for future reference, if you ever feel like it, and you'd entertain me for another interview, or even if it's not even an interview, I would love to just hear some stories, because this stuff is like the coolest stuff ever. And I really appreciate you giving me the time to let me be a part of, your world, to hear what's happening, because these are the stories that make other musicians want to be better musicians,
Thank
and go out and like find that thing that drives them. So thank you. Seriously.
thank
Thank you.
you, man. I really appreciate it. I just love it so much. It's something I'm so blessed to do. So every day is a joy to be able to do this. So I just hope that other people find that passion and joy as well.
Absolutely. So let me segue and move forward, because look, you've had a pretty storied history already, even though honestly it's actually been pretty short. And if you consider how old you are versus how much you've done up to this point. But let's fast forward, because I got to tell you, I'm super fascinated, and I'm already a fan. I want to talk about your latest project, and get into it a little bit. And I mentioned it earlier, but guys, if you have not done so already, you need to check it out. Go all the places: Spotify, Amazon, Tidal, Pandora, you name it. You need to check out Valerian Sun. They've got 2 singles out right now, and if you go to their YouTube channel as well, you can check out and find out what it is that they're doing, because it's a pretty amazing story of how they got together. So just to frame it up and kind of let our audience know, Trey, I'll give them the backstory, which is ultimately, if you guys want to check out their YouTube video, they do have a couple of really great little intro documentaries about how their band got started. And there's the one question I do have, though, is it feels like it's a bit of a studio project at the moment, because was I sharp enough to realize that the video, as well as the documentaries, don't have a bass player? I saw you playing bass, and I
Yeah.
think I even saw James playing bass, but I wasn't sure. I was like, doesn't seem like there's a bass player in this band yet.
Yeah. There's not. I played most of the instruments. James played some of the guitar, I think, on, I don't know if it was which one he did it on, if it was All at Once or one of the tracks. He did some clean guitar stuff on too. And but most of it was me playing bass and guitar. And it's definitely going to be something a little tricky trying to find the other member to do, I'm sure it'll come up when it's right. We're starting rehearsal soon, and in the meantime, we'll probably because James is actually a stellar guitar player and a stellar bass player. So we'll see. Maybe he can do both. I'm
guys
not
will
sure.
be the new power trio and come out.
Do some Rush.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So the once again, the band is Valerian Sun, and the two singles that you can find right now on Spotify. The first one is the first one actually wasn't The Burnout. I saw the video for that, but I believe All at Once was the first single you guys released. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you guys something, and I know that it's hard to explain, so y'all just need to go to wherever you go to listen to your music. But the intro riffs to the melodies to everything, I was hearing everything from Muse to I felt a little Marilyn Manson in there. I was like, this reminds me of the Killers. I mean, I hate to compare, right? It's not even about that. We should be looking at this as a whole project, but everyone has influences. Talk to me about how this got started. What's up with this band? Because I love it.
Yeah, so it was, I've known John Michael since he was a wee little lad, probably 8 or 9 years old he was when I met him. And see, how I met him was through his dad, right? So his dad was kind of my business coach, and then I also taught him lessons. But we became great friends over that process because I spent so much time with his dad. And man, I was so lucky to have someone like that around me, kind of coaching me in the business world, because my dad had passed away when I was 18. So, it was just hard to find somebody who knew the right steps. You know what I mean? It was like, he wasn't in the music field, but he knew enough about business to know they're probably not far off, And he was right. They're not really. So it was just a process of, knowing him over years. And then, he was playing drums in the very beginning. So, I would jam with him and stuff. And, fast forward all those years later, he called me to do a country project. That's how it started. And the country project kind of fell through, right? And the singer, I think, is what happened. There was a snafu with the singer, like he couldn't do it or something came up. And so he was like, let me see if I can find someone. And, John Michael's a hard worker, man. So he calls me in like 15 minutes, Now, it wasn't 15 minutes, but it's like a day later with the singer. And he's like, I got the guy. He's top 5 in The Voice or top 10 in The Voice. I can't remember. And incredible singer. He's local. Let's just do it, man. And I was like, what style of music? And he's like, rock. Let's do it, And so that's how it started, basically, And so it's neat because I've had all this history with John Michael for all these years, but we really have never played in any projects together. Not meaningfully so. It's just never worked out, And so it really quite fun for me because I've gotten to see him grow up and learn the drums and become a great musician. And then to get to do something with him finally after all these years, and his dad was always, egging me on too. So it's really quite neat because now we're together doing this, And so now he has his real son and somebody who was like a son to him, and so we have been like brothers. So it's really, really quite awesome.
And the band members we're talking about too, just for the audience sake too. So James Walpert is the lead singer, and John Michael Valutis is the drummer for Valerian Sun, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is great. I mean, look, and guys, anyone who's watching this again, and we'll post up all of the socials, and we'll send you a link as well that you will see that flashes in regards to the YouTube and the Spotify and all the things that you need to go do. You need to check out it's like 6 minutes. There's 2 videos or like 4 minutes a piece, I think. And you can feel the love and the camaraderie, and it's happening, and they're doing this thing. We're going to put a project together. We're going to write some songs in 4 days. We're going to write, mix, master, produce, get it out and be done. And it's fun too. The process. Do you like that, right? As a guitarist, just as a musician, the process of creating, right?
I love it. That's my favorite, most, exciting moment is in the spot, the pressure's on to do something, make it happen, because you don't know what's coming. It's not like you can prepare for that really. I mean, you've prepared your whole life for it, but you can't really know what the song is going to be. You don't know the direction yet. I mean, we really had no direction. And so it was
And
funny.
how long did you know James, for example, before you
I
went into
only
that
met
studio?
one time. Yeah. I mean,
There was this moment. I know you're going to know what I'm talking about. You probably watched that video for editing 100 times, but there's something that's very specific that captured a moment for me. And I was like, man, that I love that. And I love it when it happens to me, when I get to be creative with someone and it cuts
mhm.
this shot. And James is like, hey man, you think you can do this solo thing right before I come back in to sing? And you just kind of take your guitar and you bend it. You go "Wah," like that. And you
Yeah.
like, but then you kind of slowly bring it down and you're like, yeah, I can do that. And you're like, you do exactly that thing. And I was like, yes.
Mhm.
Hey, so real quick, I know we got to get out of here pretty soon. You got a lot of things that are going on right now. And again, Trey, I really appreciate your time. Hey, tell me about, so what are we doing with Valerian Sun? Is there going to be a tour? I heard you say rehearsals. You got more
Yeah.
songs. When's the album coming out? What are we doing?
Yeah. So we're working on our net. We have a bunch of tunes in the gate already. And so we're working on trying to get some releases done. We just had that one video release, but we've also shot another video too. So that'll be on the way as well. And then we have another song that we're covering. I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything about it yet. So that'll be kind of a surprise.
Okay.
And but it's been really wonderful. I mean, we have a good team of people, and just getting to create with them, it's going to be a neat event for sure. And so we're going to start these rehearsals very soon. So the search for a bass player, I'm sure will endure, and we're going to start gigging, which will be awesome. So I'm super stoked for it for sure.
That's fantastic. Well, guys, once again, the band is Valerian Sun. We are talking to Trey Alexander. He's the guitarist, and we've got so much that we could cover and even more. We got to get out of here, but I do want to tell you guys, after this video, stick around. We are going to show on here Valerian Sun's latest video. It's called The Burnout, and you're going to love it. It's innovative, it's fun, and it's really creative. You guys are going to dig it. But last thing I want to touch base on before we go, Trey, I got to know, you mentioned a lot of artists that your dad had influence on you with, and he'd bring you records, and we were talking, everything from Hendrix and even Muddy Waters and blues. When I
Mm-hmm.
watched your 2006 video, what you were playing, the thing that you wrote, man, it had so many different components in there, but it wasn't what you think it would be. It was very, it was classical, but it had some blues. There was a lot of stuff. Who's your biggest influence? Like,
Man, that's a
who's
tough
your
one.
guy?
If it was, I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan was probably the biggest influence. I would say if somebody like I worshipped at that time, at early age, I wanted to be that man. You know what I mean? And so I watched every video, but I mean, I had so many influences: Eric Johnson, Brent Mason, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Carl Verheyen, Steve Vai, of course, Joe Satriani, Steve Lukather, Richie Kotzen, of course. All those guys were huge, integral parts of my playing. But Stevie Ray Vaughan was probably the first number one guy for me, back in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me, the 16, 17-year-old kid, I would have Stevie Ray Vaughan all day. You know what I mean?
That's so great. Well, listen, I
Yeah.
can't tell you how excited this is. I was to do this, and what an honor, honestly, not just because other than being a guy that digs music, and I just love talking to people. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today. And I'm looking forward to maybe we get to do it again. Guys, the final word, Trey, you got it. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Hey, it's just thank you all for checking out the music. We're so blessed to be doing this, and just thank you so much. And thank you, buddy. I really appreciate the interview and everything you're doing as well. It's just been a pleasure meeting you and getting to talk with you. And of course, anytime you want to talk and further, do a deeper interview, I would love to do that. So
That would be fantastic. Maybe we can do it after the next single, or maybe the next time the records come out for Valerian Sun or a new video. I would love to be the guy if you'd let me. So, guys, hey, thanks again, Trey. Thank you, and many thanks to the band Valerian Sun and Jamie Roberts as well, helping us put this whole thing together. I couldn't be more happy with the way this turned out. Looking forward to it next time, guys. Live at Chance's house here with Trey Alexander, the band Valerian Sun. Check them out. We'll see you guys very soon. And stick around. We're going to show the video for the Burnout. You guys have a great one. We'll talk to you soon.
rock and roll.